Hey, Jamie here, and welcome to Module 1, Part 3, Strategic Growth in the Marketplace. I'm very excited to go through this part of the module. I'm hoping that there will be some new ideas in here that you'll find very valuable. And many of these ideas were not taught in college, even if you do have a business degree. So I'm hoping you'll find many of these ideas very valuable. Again, I recommend having a journal and a pen, something to write down any questions or thoughts or notes that come to your mind as you're going through this, because that way you can either, if we are working one-on-one, we'll be able to discuss that, but then two, if you are doing this on your own, then that way you'll be able to reflect on them later. So in this module, or in this part of the module, we're going to break down understanding what is strategic growth and value contribution in the marketplace. And by marketplace, I mean, how do you go out and make money? Whether that's within a company or within if you have your own business, etc. But the marketplace is just, think of that as just making money. Understanding value, compounding associations, how to become irreplaceable in the marketplace, and how to monetize your personal value. And then understanding what makes the most successful people on earth successful. And in this terms, successful, I'm talking about economics, so financial success, not in terms of spiritual or any of the other important definitions of success. So again, just monetary. So strategic growth, as we talked about in the first part of this module, was that it was the overlap between growth as well as the skills, knowledge, creativity, and leadership that you can be paid for in the marketplace. So the strategic growth is your ability to develop yourself in a way that will improve or increase your skills, knowledge, creativity, and leadership so that you can earn more money. So strategic growth is increasing your economic value by improving those 4 items. So I want to start with breaking down a theory called the economic value ladder. And it may be something that you've seen before, but if not, I'd still like to go through it anyways. So if you think of the marketplace, there are people at the very low end of the marketplace making very little, and then there's people at the high end of the marketplace that are worth a lot and they're making a lot of money and they have a very high economic value. And so if I were to ask you how low or how much is someone making at the bottom of the economic value ladder, what do you think? So take a couple seconds and think through how much is someone making at the very bottom of the economic value ladder. Now think about how much is someone making at the very top of the economic value ladder. And specifically, let's use the United States as an example. How much is someone making at the very top of the economic value ladder? And if you were to break it down, people are making a very different amount of money at the top and the bottom. So at the bottom, people are usually making minimum wage. Now, $7.50 is just an example I used. I know that in other states, some of the minimum wages are $15 an hour. So it really depends per state. But at the bottom of the economic value ladder, you are paid a minimum amount per hour. And that's usually set by government, by regulation. But then at the top of the economic value ladder, there are people making more than $1,000 an hour. And the question is why? Why is there such a difference between the people and how much money they're making? And it comes down to how much value are they able to contribute to the marketplace. So the way that you can climb this ladder is through strategic, focused, and disciplined personal development. You're developing yourself into someone who can bring more value to the marketplace and therefore be paid more. So strategic growth is the way that you're going to be climbing this ladder. Now, the reason it's a ladder too with these steps, if you will, is because you're not going to read a book and immediately be paid more money the next day. It's not like you're going to, read 10 pages and be paid 10 more cents the next day. But over time, what will happen is, let's say that over 12 months, you read multiple different books, you invest in a course, and your skills develop, your knowledge develop. And because of that, you're coming up with new ideas that are more valuable. You then take action on those ideas, and all of a sudden, you've contributed more value to your job, to your team, or to the marketplace. Well, the moment that value is realized and you monetize it, you jump. And that's the up step in this ladder. So it's kind of like you develop, and and then you monetize and you increase where you are on this ladder. So know that it's a long-term game and it's geometric. It's not a smooth curve. It's going to take time and then you jump. Take more time and then you jump. And that's the way that you climb this ladder. So your income is only limited by your value contribution, by how much value you bring to other people, to the company or to other people in the marketplace if you have your own business. So one of the formulas that you can use and apply to any business or really anyone making money is this very simple 3-part equation. Value creation times value distribution equals total value. And you can use this equation to value anything in the world. People, items, businesses, anything. So as an example, why is McDonald's worth billions of dollars? Well, they created a Happy Meal, and let's say that the Happy Meal is $7. So value creation, they created something worth $7. Now, the value distribution part is how many people are they selling that to? Well, they're selling that to billions of people around the world. And so if you take $7 and multiply it by a billion, you have a $7 billion total value. And similarly, if you have, say, an idea, and that idea, is going to be worth, let's say, $1,000. Well, if you're then able to communicate that idea and implement that idea, and let's say it positively affects 5 other people or 10 other people, well, you now have a $5,000 or $10,000 idea, depending on how many people or how many instances that you can bring that to the marketplace and actually monetize it. So this is something where, all right, well, this is great and all. I understand how it works for businesses, but how does this work for me? How does this work for my life, my career? Well, your value distribution is 1. Because if you're working for an employer, if you're working for a company and you're receiving a paycheck, you have value distribution equal to 1 because you're only working for one company. And so if you know that there are only 2 variables, value creation times value distribution, well, if your value distribution is limited, then you know that you need to focus on the value creation, which is how can I be coming up with more valuable ideas and implementing them in order to increase my total value. So if you're working for an employer, most of your value is going to be coming from your ideas and how many problems can you solve? What innovative new ideas can you bring to the team or to the company? And you creating value is how you're going to increase your total value and make a lot more money. It's not just execution. So taking a step back and thinking about the entire marketplace overall. So how is value exchanged in the marketplace? So you can think of the entire world as a marketplace. You have the countries and all the different continents. So you have North America, Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, Australia, and many of the other areas on Earth, smaller areas. And all of these can be broken down into international marketplaces where countries are trading between countries. But then you have national marketplaces, regional marketplaces, local marketplaces. So think your local community. But then you also have a digital marketplace, which is the internet. And now, because of the internet and because of communication and technology, everybody is now interconnected. Everybody is affecting everyone else. So only 3 things can actually be exchanged in the marketplace: products, services, and financial assets. Those are the only 3 things that are ever bought or sold in the marketplace. Now, you as an employee of a company, you are providing services because you're actually working for them. You're doing things for them. But if you were to create a product, say, and then go out and sell the product, well, you're providing a product, and a financial asset is usually some sort of financial investment. So, trade. Why do people buy and sell? Trade is driven by problems, opportunities, and desires in every industry, for everyone, anywhere in the world. This is why people make buying and selling decisions. Trade is driven by problems, opportunities, and desires. And it's across every level too. So national governments have problems, opportunities, and desires. Municipalities have problems, opportunities, and desires. Communities, companies, and consumers all have problems, opportunities, and desires. So the marketplace globally is nothing more than just billions of transactions of people at all levels, governments, municipalities, communities, companies, and consumers, all trying to solve problems, advance opportunities, and fulfill their desires. And it's happening internationally. So you have countries trading with other countries, products, services, and financial assets in order to solve problems, advance opportunities, and fulfill desires. And then you have the other side that's trying to provide the solutions or help advance that opportunity in some way or help fulfill that desire. So because you have both the buyer and the seller, the buyer's buying the product, the service, of the financial asset, and the seller is the one providing the product, services, and financial assets. That means that whenever there's a problem or an opportunity or a desire, there has to be both a buy side and a sell side. So every problem, opportunity, desire has two sides. The buy side is someone who has a problem, wants to pursue an opportunity, or has a desire. And then the sell side is the person or the organization that has the solution or can help advance the opportunity or can fulfill that desire. So as an example, you have the buy side, which is the global warming, which is a big problem. And then a sell side example would be Tesla. They're coming out with sustainable vehicles that is helping solve that problem. But then you also have the world and COVID-19. That was a huge problem. Well, immediately people on the sell side started coming out with different ways to solve the problem. And one of the first ways that people started solving the problem was virus testing. So Abbott Laboratories came out and started providing virus testing. And then you have the buy side. So the United States as a government needs to borrow money. Well, they have to go out and solve that problem. And in order to do that, they need to issue treasuries, which is a financial asset. And they then put those out into the market, investors buy them, and then the investors are lending money to the United States government through purchasing those financial assets. So then you have, as an example, companies that need to outsource in order to produce their products. So Apple, for example, needs internal circuit boards, and they actually outsource the production and the manufacturing of those circuit boards to a company called Samsung Electromechanics, which is a Vietnamese country. And they're the ones who sell the internal circuit boards. So again, a buy side and a sell side. But then you have the job market. And this is where you fit into this equation, because if you're working for a company, you're the sell side. You're the one providing labor, thought, and leadership to the company that you're working for. And that's important for you to realize is you are providing a service. You are the sell side. And the buy side is all of these companies, top companies across countless different industries and across the world, that they need top human talent. They need people who can provide labor, thought, and leadership to their companies. So, but how does the value of a product, a service, or a financial asset, how is that determined? How do you know what a fair value is for a specific transaction? How does the marketplace determine fair value? And there's really two types of value. And this is super important for you to know, because how you think about value can be very clearly divided between objective value and subjective value. Now, the difference between these two is that you can think of objective value as value that is factual. It's information in the marketplace that everyone in the marketplace can agree on. It's not biased. It's not your thinking or your thoughts. It is a factual detail that everyone can look at, non-biased, and agree on. So it's value that is derived from the marketplace. So this could be production and service costs. It could be the amount of supply and demand for something, or it could be previous transactions or previous purchases or information that's historical, and it's data that everyone can look at, understand, analyze, interpret, etc. So objective value equals facts and data. But then you have subjective value, which is perceived value or thought-based value. And it's value that's derived from personal factors, your perception, your thoughts, your values, and your beliefs. and it's very biased. And that's the reason why some people may value something a lot. So say someone's willing to pay $300 for something, but then someone else looks at it and thinks, I would never buy that, because why would I ever buy that? And that's because the subjective value is very different. Someone looking at something who wants something much more than someone else, they're biased. And they're placing extra value on something because of their thoughts, values, beliefs, or their perception of whatever it is. So, as an example, how might you value these two sweaters objectively? So take a couple of seconds and think through, how could you, using data or using facts, value these two different sweaters? So one of the first ways that you could value it is by looking at the production costs, because these are tangible costs that you can look up, and it's data driven. So for example, looking at how much does the cotton or wool cost that actually makes these sweaters? How much is the human labor and paying the people that are knitting these or running the machines or creating these? And then you have the property, plant, and the equipment, so the actual machinery. You're going to have marketing and advertising costs to sell these items. And then you have shipping and logistics to move them either e-commerce or to actual retail presence, and as well as additional costs. But then you're going to have a total cost of production. And then what many companies do is they have a 5 times or a 4 times retail margin, where they'll put that on whatever the cost of production is, and then that's going to be their retail sales price that they actually sell it either via internet or through their stores. So then another way that you could value these objectively using data and information is looking at how much have sweaters like these actually sold for in the past. So how much did someone buy these for historically? And for example, let's say that I was looking at the blue sweater. Well, if I know that someone paid, let's say, $130 for the blue sweater last year, and then I look at the gray sweater and I know that somebody paid $125 for the gray sweater, well, and that was last year. If I were to look at these sweaters now and see that the blue sweater is selling for $100 and the gray sweater is now selling for $100, you'd think it's a bargain, because you know that these sweaters sold for 30% more in the past. So because of that, knowing that the historical data is they cost more, if you were to see the cost now at $100 or the price now for $100, you think it's a deal because you know the data from the past. And then another way that you could look at it is supply and demand. So simply, if more people want the blue sweater, the price of the blue sweater is going to be a lot higher than that of the gray sweater. And similarly, because the gray sweater, fewer people want to buy the gray sweater, the price of that is most likely going to be lower. So just simple supply and demand. And that's when most people think economics, that's what they're thinking of. So as an example, I had seen this and I thought it was outrageous. So just had a customer pay $87 to ship toilet paper to Oregon. Now, this is not me. I saw this and I laughed and I thought this is a great example of understanding the difference between subjective and objective value. So why would someone pay $87 for toilet paper when it normally costs $10 to $16? Objectively, someone knows that it's only $10 to $16 to pay for toilet paper, but why would someone pay almost 5 or 6 times that? Well, when I saw this, it was on March 13th, 2020, and that was pretty much the day that the world ran out of toilet paper because of COVID-19. And you could not go on a website to find toilet paper. Every store was out of toilet paper, and everyone in the world was looking for toilet paper. And there were 4 things that I thought of. So, 1, there was little to no supply in either stores or digitally. There was extreme demand globally because everybody was affected by COVID and everybody needs toilet paper. There was a pressing need, literally, and extremely uncomfortable consequences for not having toilet paper. And it's kind of, people were running through thoughts like, what do I do? Do I use a kitchen towel? Do I take a shower? People were having thoughts go through their mind that they had absolutely no idea what to do if they ran out of toilet paper. So objectively, the person knew that $87 didn't make sense. They know historically how much toilet paper should cost. So again, objectively, they knew it did not make sense. But interestingly, was subjectively, it was too important to them. Emotions caused them to literally take the reason and logic, chuck it out the window, and buy it for $87. Because subjectively, the value was it was so high that they were willing to pay the $87. So the marketplace cleared an $87 roll of toilet paper because of low supply, extreme demand, and a very strongly perceived need for the product. So subjectively, how might we look at these sweaters and view them or value them subjectively? Well, one of the most common ways that people look at clothing in particular is trademark or brand. So for example, Duluth, if you're aware if you're familiar with the brand, but Duluth has built themselves on the idea of a manly man sweater. Someone who eats bark, climbs trees, and builds homes with their hands. I mean, this is the man who goes out in the wilderness and fights bears. Unbreakable manliness. So they're able to charge a pretty high premium because when someone buys Duluth, that's what they're buying. They're buying an identity of, I am a man's man. I am wilderness. And so then on the counter side, you have someone like Gap. And Gap has established themselves as a brand where they sell to families at a lower price that's affordable, and someone who's not so much focused on identity or brand or status or prestige, but someone who's looking for high quality clothing at a low price that's affordable, usually for families. So, and then you have another example. And if you live in a city, I'm sure that you've seen Canada Goose. And the difference between a Patagonia and a Canada Goose, both similar styles. I mean, look at these pictures. They look very similar styles. And of course, there's a little bit of a difference. But they're both down sweaters. And so they're both down, they're both warm. And if you've ever heard someone talk about why they own a Canada Goose, they will always tell you it's super warm. It's warmer than any other jacket in the world. Well, there are other down sweaters with just as much down in the sweater for the same amount of warmth. Now, in this case, I don't know, maybe the Canada Goose is a little bit warmer, but I guarantee it's not 4 or 5 times warmer. And when you look at the price, $160 compared to $675, why? Why does a similar product have a 4 or 5 times difference in price? And it's solely because of brand. It's solely because of the subjective value based on the brands. So someone who's buying Patagonia, think of the people who are buying these different products. Think of why they're buying the products. In their mind, what are they buying? Yes, they're buying a jacket, but what else are they buying? They're buying identity. They're buying something that aligns with who they believe that they are or who they desire to be. And that's all subjective. That's beliefs and values in their mind. So Patagonia, their brand identity, if you will, or their target customer, someone who's outdoorsy, enjoys the wilderness, enjoys the walking around outdoors with friends or family or hiking, etc. And they know that they're not willing to spend thousands of dollars on clothing. And they're not really targeting those types of people. Someone who's wearing Patagonia may not be wearing a Rolex because, again, it's a different purchase decision. But then when you look at someone wearing Canada Goose, they care very, very much about status, about prestige, about looking wealthy, about looking successful. And it's not a bad or good thing. It's just that is part of the purchase decision behind the brand. Canada Goose knows that they can sell at a higher price because when someone wears Canada Goose on the street in the city or wherever else, people look at that and know how expensive the jacket is. And because of that, they know that that person is wealthy or successful, or at least that person appears to be wealthy or successful. And that's why people buy a brand. Even if it's an extremely high price, they're buying the identity that comes with it. So, in a quick summary, you have problems, opportunities, and desires that drive the marketplace. That's why people go to the marketplace. And in the marketplace, products, services, and financial assets are the only three things that are actually bought or sold. And so because of that, there's both a buy side and a sell side, and value is determined both objectively and subjectively. Now, in your mind, you might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with my career? And I promise it fits in. So you are a business. You are a service provider. And if there's anything I want you to get out of this part 3 of module 1, is that you are not an employee. You are not an employee. You are a service provider. You are a business. And what you offer the marketplace is labor, thought, and leadership. That's where your value comes from. You can physically do something with either your hands or physically come up with ideas or run processes with your mind. And you can think, you can come up with ideas, solve problems, and think critically in ways that maybe other people can't or haven't before. And leadership. And I like to think of leadership as working with people, being able to influence, negotiate, sell. But then there's the more traditional thought of leadership, which is actually leading people or influencing a large group of people or strategizing and then organizing a large group of people. So labor, it requires a certain amount of knowledge, skills, and physical work. Importantly, it can be systematized. It can be systematized. And it's easier to find and evaluate. It's inexpensive to replace. And because it can be systematized, it is substitutable. So as a quick example here, let's take a neighborhood kid who's cutting lawns. And that kid is cutting lawns for $20 an hour. So if they're cutting a lawn for $20 an hour and then all of a sudden that kid decides, hey, I don't want to cut your lawn anymore, you could essentially go out and find someone else who has the knowledge and skills to work a lawnmower and can also cut your lawn for $20 an hour. And you're not going to be pulling your hair out and stressing about it because you're certain you can go find someone else for $20 an hour who will cut your lawn. So that's an example of the labor itself is systematizable, it's substitutable, and because of that, it's easy to find and evaluate and inexpensive to replace someone else to cut your lawn. Now, interestingly, it's not just physical labor that's substitutable. There's also complex labor or skilled labor. And an example would be financial analysts or other people in medicine or accountants or engineers. And the reason is when you're very early in your career, oftentimes what you're doing is primarily labor. You're given a task, you do the task, and then whatever the results are of the task, you then give it to someone else to make a decision. Now, it's not a good or bad thing, but it's important to understand that when you usually start your career, most of the value that you're starting with is labor. And because of that, you can be laid off. And because of that, you can be replaced or fired. Or if you do leave, they can replace you with someone else within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it's because most of the labor most of the value that you're providing in that first early part of your career is labor. And it's valued objectively. And that's why you can find usually a starting salary very, very similar across the board for a specific type of position because it's valued objectively. Now you have thought. And your thought also requires skills, knowledge, creativity, problem solving, and innovation. And it's very hard to find and evaluate someone's thoughts because even if you do an interview, if you only have even 2 hours interviewing someone, you still would not fully be able to determine the value of their thoughts, the value of their ideas. So it's hard to find and evaluate, and it's extremely expensive to replace and difficult to substitute. Because what happens if you're on a team and all of a sudden the manager, who is the brains of the team, leaves? Well, it could be very difficult and take a long time to find someone else who has that experience, that background, and the thoughts, the creative strategy for the team. So it's difficult to substitute, and sometimes when a thoughtful person or a creative problem-solving person leaves the team, it could be the death of the team or the death of the company. And one example I'd love to use here is look at what happened when Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple. The company started spiraling downhill, and they ended up having to call him back and bring him back because not only did they lose the leader, which we'll talk about in a second, but they lost the juice. They lost the creativity that he brought, the thoughtfulness, the problem solving that he brought to the company. So even though thought is partially valued objectively, it's very much so valued subjectively as well. And then you have leadership. And leadership requires emotional intelligence it requires emotional intelligence, ethics, listening, as well as written and verbal communication. So again, do not think of leadership as only leading people. Think of leadership as your ability to influence other people, to negotiate with other people, to have a deep, meaningful conversation one-on-one with other people. So leadership is your ability to work with people. It's hard to find and evaluate. It's expensive to replace, and it's difficult to substitute. Because sometimes, again, when you lose the leader, what happens to the group? What happens to the team? What happens to the entire organization? Sometimes it takes months to find someone else who can do that, or years to find, or sometimes you cannot find someone else who can do the job or add the value that previously the other person was able to. So in this case, going back to the Steve Jobs example, when he left, the company was in shambles, and they ended up having to bring him back. So leadership, although it is valued somewhat objectively, it's primarily valued subjectively. So I want to give some other examples. So assuming that there's no quality issues and there's 2 dentists in your area, let's say they're within 5 miles of you, which of these 2 dentists would you choose? And again, there's no quality issues, no problems. You just go in, they clean your teeth, fix your teeth, whatever, and you leave. Of course, you'd go with dentist number 2. And the reason for that is if you're just going in to have your teeth cleaned or your tooth fixed, why would you ever pay more than you need to? And why would you ever pay more to have your grass cut if someone else could cut it for $10 instead of $20? So labor, because it's substitutable, labor will always be price driven. That's important for you to know. Competitive pricing will always affect the value, the objective value of labor. And another example would be accountants. So assuming that, and this is, I want to be careful here too, because there are many accountants they're really more consultants. They are creating and consulting ideas and creating thoughtful ways of improving businesses that previously didn't exist before. So I want you to think of this example as someone who's more of a bookkeeper, or someone who's not adding creative, thoughtful, strategic ideas to a company, but more so, hey, here's work, do my taxes, get this done, file. So assuming that both CPAs in this example are experienced, who would you hire to do your taxes? Assuming that all you need to do is get your taxes done and there's no consulting. It's just, hey, here's the information, plug in the information, prepare the files, submit the files, do my taxes. Why would a manager pay an additional $25,000 when they can hire someone to do that for $75,000? They wouldn't. They will hire the person for $75,000 because they're in a for-profit business. Employers, assuming it's a for-profit organization or company, they're going to save money on their people, because if they can get the job done at a lower amount to do labor, they will. So, but then you have examples where there are salespeople, and there are very, very wealthy salespeople, and some are paid more than $1 million a year, and then you have other salespeople who are only making $80,000 or $60,000 or some even $50,000. Why? It's not labor. And that's where you can see the difference between, one salesperson clearly knows how to sell and influence and work with people better than salesperson number 2, who does not know how to sell very well, or doesn't know how to influence or negotiate or close deals as well as the first one. So that difference in skill and that difference in their creativity and their ability to influence people is more than 10 times the value. Now, of course, salesperson number one, making over $1 million a year, that's an extreme example, but there are salespeople out there making significantly more than $1 million a year because of how great they are in terms of their subjective value, their thoughtfulness, their creativity, and their leadership. So, but then you have, let's say, going back to the accountant example, let's say that there are 2 accounting managers. Now, both of these accounting managers have to have some technical skill or good technical skill. They have to understand accounting, of course. But then, why would one accounting manager be paid twice the amount as a second accounting manager? And that's where it comes down to the difference between soft skills and technical skills. So soft skills are valued primarily subjectively, but they have to have some objective value or some technical base. So the way that I like to break this down is, think of going back to the accounting manager. The accounting manager does have a technical base. They have to understand accounting. But by increasing their soft skills, which is their thoughtfulness, their creativity, and their ability to influence and lead people, think of soft skills as an amplifier of value. It's like a multiplier of value. And the better technical skills you have, the more creative you can be. But when you have the soft skills, you can then deliver that value to the world. So technical skills allow you to come up with ideas that maybe other people don't have. But you need to be able to deliver those ideas. So going back to that value equation, value creation times value distribution equals total value. The thoughtfulness, the creativity is coming up with ideas, and then you need to deliver those ideas through your ability to work with people, which is leadership. So if all you know how to do is labor, you will always be valued objectively, and you'll always be competing on price, which is not ideal for your career. So again, soft skills are valued primarily subjectively, but they also have objective base. And then technical skills are valued primarily objectively. So what does that look like in terms of a bell curve? Well, looking at in Chicago, I pulled up these price breakdowns or these salary breakdowns for financial analysts as well as directors of corporate development in Chicago. So on the bottom, you have the bell curve for financial analysts, which is, think of that as an entry-level position after college. So the 25th percentile, the spread between the 25th percentile and the 75th percentile is about 15 grand. But then you look at the average or the median, and that's 84,000 compared to the top decile or top portion of this bell curve, which is 100 grand. Well, again, that's just about 15 grand, a little over 15 grand. So the spreads between the 25th and 75th, as well as the spread between the average and the top, they're both 15 grand. But then interestingly, when you look at the top bell curve, the spreads blow out. And that's because it's no longer based on objective value. It's primarily being based on subjective value, which is very debatable. It's negotiable value. So at the director level, you have a lot of people being valued very differently based on their thoughts, based on their creativity, their strategic planning, their ability to lead teams, and their results in leading teams. So their 25th percentile to the 75th percentile is about a 90 grand difference. That's a 90 grand spread. And then look at the average to the top part of this bell curve. And again, it's about 90 grand. So you can see that across the entire curve on the top portion or on the top half of the slide, the spreads blow out because of the difference in subjective value. So looking at the bottom where the financial analysts are, these financial analysts are primarily being valued in the marketplace by employers or by other people objectively for what are the technical skills that they know, what is the specialized knowledge that you know. They're the ones actually doing the work, so they're the ones in Excel or creating the financial reports or reporting or doing data analysis. They're the one doing the actual labor, if you will, and then the analysis and reporting. But then on the top, the directors of the corporate development teams, who are leading groups of financial analysts as well as potentially other managers, they're primarily being valued subjectively. So they're being paid for their management skills, their strategic thinking skills, innovative ideas for the team and for the company, as well as solving problems and creating efficiency in order to do more. So if you were to lay that out, what that means is many people who do not develop and continuously improve themselves, they don't develop the thoughtfulness or their creativity or their problem-solving skills that others who do focus on personal development do. And they also don't develop their soft skills, their ability to influence, to communicate, to write, to sell, to lead, to negotiate. And a lot of the people who don't focus on the subjective value, which are the thoughts and the leadership, they eventually hit what I call a technical skill ceiling. And that technical skill ceiling you cannot break through because you are substitutable. You can be replaced. And if you decide to leave, they'll just hire another engineer in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or another financial analyst in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, etc. So it's very hard for you to make more money in your career when you're basing all of your value on a technical skill, because that's not enough. That's not how you continuously climb that economic value ladder. You have to have the thoughts, the creativeness, the new ideas, the innovation, as well as the ability to influence, lead, sell, negotiate, and work with people. So, how does the global marketplace affect your objective value, your technical skills? Well, my background was in finance, and when I thought about it, I started to realize there was a lot of software and a lot of technology coming out to help improve the work of a financial analyst. But then also I realized it wasn't just financial analysts. There were things happening in coding, where coding was being outsourced, and medical research was being outsourced, and data science was being outsourced. So all of a sudden, these technical skills that took us a long time, accounting is being outsourced. So technical skills that took people a long time to develop, well, all of a sudden, because of the internet and because of freelancing and gig economy, there are millions of people across the world that can provide service and do these technical skills. And the problem is that if you live in a high cost of living country, you're competing with people who are willing to work at a much lower price. Because again, if it's technical skill, if it can be systematized and substituted, if it can be repeated by someone else, it's going to be based on competitive pricing. So when you're living in a high cost of living country, whether that's America or parts of Europe or parts of Asia or Australia, etc., as well as some other parts of the world, you're going to have to charge a much higher price just to make ends meet, to keep the lights on, to eat, to purchase education, and continuously develop yourself, to take care of the family, etc. Now, companies, what they do is they outsource. And the reason companies outsource is because why would they pay more for the same result? It doesn't make any sense. So earlier on, they started setting up facilities, think manufacture. So I'll use automotive as an example. A lot of the US automotive companies started setting up manufacturing facilities in China, India, Mexico, other parts of Latin America, because the human labor was so much cheaper. And the human labor was cheaper because the cost of living in those countries was dramatically less than those of developed nations, like the US and Europe. So, higher standards of living are the result of global supply chains, outsourcing, and economic growth. So as money is flowing out of these developed nations into these developing nations, because we're paying those people for their labor, or paying those companies for the outsourcing that we're sending to those countries, as money flows to those developing countries, there will eventually be a break-even point where those prices and the standard of living is increasing within those countries because money is flowing to them, that eventually they will become developed and they will have higher labor costs. and they will eventually no longer make sense financially to outsource. So then you have a problem because companies say, well, we've already set up the manufacturing, we've already been outsourcing to these countries, but it no longer makes sense because it's gotten more expensive there, and we have to pay for all the shipping and the logistics, and we have the communication barrier between these two countries that, why don't we just bring everything home? Why don't we just bring it back to our high cost of living and save the shipping and logistics? Well, instead, what they do is they start replacing humans. And that's where technology and automation comes into the play. Because if humans are the biggest price point, well, the companies will then save up money and purchase or spend a lot of money investing in technology that will eventually pay off and be more profitable over the long term. And so as an example, you have companies that have set up manufacturing in, say, China, and they had human labor, but eventually they hit that break-even point where they realized it no longer makes sense. So then they replace the people in those manufacturing, they keep the manufacturing in China or in wherever they have it set up, and then they replace the people with machines. And so this is an example you can see in the background. Those are Chinese characters. This is a Chinese manufacturing plant, and ABB is a company that was outsourcing there, and they just invested in technology, and now it's automated. Most of their production is automated. So you can think of how this works as you have a developed country where the labor is expensive, manufacturing is expensive, services are expensive, and they will outsource to developing countries where there's cheaper labor, cheaper manufacturing, and cheaper services. But eventually, as money flows from the developed to the developing country, they're going to hit that break-even point where it no longer makes sense. And then they'll invest in technology to automate that technical skill, to automate it. And then eventually that's going to lead to minimal or no labor cost. It's the cheapest form of manufacturing to have automation. And automated services, usually the quality's higher because there's no human error, and it's cheaper, and it runs 24/7. So you must become irreplaceable. You cannot allow yourself to only rely on technical skills and not be creative and not know how to work with people, because if you do, technology will catch you. And especially with the rate of where things are going with technology, especially with deep learning and AI, as that gets better and better and better, a lot of the technical skill, labor, and the jobs, those will be either replaced or significantly reduced, because rather than needing 10 financial analysts, well, with all the outcoming software and the automation that's to come, maybe they only need 2 financial analysts because they're so much more efficient. So you must become irreplaceable, and always remember, labor can be replaced. Your mind can't, your ideas can't, your creativity cannot. And machines are faster, cheaper, more efficient, and they never sleep. They can run 24/7. Of course, they're going to have a little bit of downtime, but for the most part, they will always be able to work harder and longer than humans can. And people relying on technical skills are competing directly with technology, and they will lose eventually. And so another example is, think of truck drivers or Uber and Lyft drivers or people who are driving vehicles for a living or transportation for a living. There will be autonomous vehicles eventually. And we already know that that's pretty much out now. It's just waiting on regulation and the ability to actually start implementing that in a way that is commercialized and regulated. But when that does, poof, all of a sudden those people, technology's caught up with them, and they've lost their jobs. And so other examples where that's happened is QuickBooks. So bookkeepers previously were the ones taking all the information, the financial information, accounting information, expenses, invoices, etc., and creating financial statements. Well, all of a sudden when software was created, no longer did a manager or a company leader have to wait 2 months or 3 months in order to get a quarterly statement. Instead, it was happening real time, automatically. And they could always get a snapshot of their company. So not only was it more efficient and cheaper, but it was real time, and it only made sense to use it. So probably millions of accountants lost their jobs because of a QuickBooks, Now that forced them to upskill and become better in order to get another job. So, but then you have E-Trade. So way back when there wasn't, retail investors couldn't just log into E-Trade or log into Charles Schwab or any other trading platform and make their own trades. People had to actually pick up the phone and call a broker and say, hey, I want X, I want Y stock, or I want to invest my money in this way. Well, now, because of the software and online banking and online investing, people can just simply log in and book their own trades or do their own investing. That didn't exist previously. Technology caught up. Many of those brokers lost their jobs, and they had to either upskill or find some other type of work. And then you have Tesla. And just as an example, they're coming out with the autonomous driving, and so are other companies as well. But autonomous driving is a great example of where technology is catching up with labor. And then Power BI. So right now, Power BI, as well as other data analytics companies, what they're doing is they're trying to attach and are attaching AI and deep learning to be able to do data analytics significantly better than any human could. And eventually, people who do data analysis or data analytics will be directly competing with computers and AI that can process billions of megabytes of data, of gigabytes of data, that a human mind possibly, we can't comprehend that. So they're competing with technology. And then you have Canva as an example that's in more of the arts or the creative side. You have people who are creating software and technology that's competing with graphic designers. And this is interesting because graphic design and design itself is a creative pursuit. Now, at the lowest level of that industry, the lowest level of, think of it as needing to put out a large amount of volume of design, that's where Canva competes. But Canva will never be able to compete with someone who's a world-class stylist or designer because the creativity, the innovation is there, and that's irreplaceable. So, specialized skills such as finance, accounting, programming, data analysis, operations, medicine, and many other areas are all going to face automation because of AI and deep learning and the ability to replace people that are solely relying on technical skills. So, how do we become irreplaceably valuable? How do we achieve the level where we're no longer competing with technology? And the only way we can do that is through personal development, strategic growth, developing your mind and developing your ability to think creatively, to solve problems, to come up with ideas that other people have not or could not, and that technology cannot do. So, and that goes back to what Ray Dalio's, one of the two most important things that he recommended was personal development, developing your mind, developing your soft skills and technical skills. So, again, strategic growth is the overlap between what you're good at and what you can be paid for, and improving yourself in a way that you're actively moving forward in developing your personal value, your economic value, so that you can be paid more. So, how you can think about this is you need to have both soft skills and technical skills. You have to have both. You can't just have one, because soft skills rely on technical skills, or soft skills rely on creativity. As an example, think of someone like J.K. Rowling. Why did J.K. Rowling become a billionaire writing a book? Well, her soft skill was her ability to think creatively, to come up with a story that no other human in history had ever rivaled that level of imagination. And she created a story that was an incredible story. And then her technical skill was writing. Well, billions of people know how to write. So why didn't they become billionaires? Well, she didn't become a billionaire because of her ability to write. She became a billionaire because of her creativity. And that was a soft skill. And then going back to that value equation of value creation times value distribution equals total value, she wrote a book that, the entire series is, probably between $50 to $100 for all the books, and more than 500 million people bought the entire series and read them cover to cover. It was like 500 something million people read the entire series. Well, of course she's going to make that amount of money because the distribution was amazing. So, anyways, soft skills: leadership and strategy, influence and negotiation, communication, and relationship building. These are your value distribution skills. Soft skills are value distribution skills as well as value creation skills. However, the cross-pollinated knowledge, think of that as many different areas of technical skills. So you could have a technical skill or a knowledge area that's finance. And then you could have a technical skill or a knowledge area that's computer science. And then you could have a technical skill or knowledge area that is, say, design. And then you could have another technical skill or knowledge area that is psychology. Or let's say that it's accounting or supply chain operations. Now, how this pieces together is you need the soft skills to actually take action on something, to actually implement something. But you also need the cross-pollinated knowledge because that's how you create new ideas. That's how you solve problems. So a knowledge area, when you overlap one knowledge area with another knowledge area, you're going to be able to see things or come up with ideas that other people can't because they're limited to one knowledge area. So as you combine your understanding of different knowledge areas or different technical skills, you'll come up with ideas, creative ideas that other people don't, and you'll be able to solve problems that other people can't. But just because you have a great idea doesn't mean you can actually monetize it, take action on it, be paid for it. So what you need on top of the creative ideas is you have to have the soft skills, which is how you actually implement and execute and communicate your idea and monetize it. So in this case, the creative idea is, let's say, J.K. Rowling. Well, then J.K. Rowling had this idea and she wrote the story, but then she had to publish and sell that book to millions of people. And then she was able to monetize the book. Another example would be, let's say, a product company. Well, that product company is going to have to think through the design, the functionality, the materials, the production of it, the manufacturing, like all these other things. It takes a lot of different knowledge areas to actually create a product. Well, that's a creative solution. They created a product that's valuable, but then they have to sell it. And they only sell it through soft skills. And so it's the same way for you. If you're going to be in a job or if you're going to be on a team, you need to be able to have the ability to cross-pollinate knowledge, to come up with ideas that other people on your team couldn't, or other people in your company or industry couldn't. You have these valuable ideas, and then you need to have the ability to influence, to negotiate, to sell, or lead people in order to take that idea and actually implement it and see the value created from it. So, the value to the marketplace, if someone has little to no personal development, they're going to grow very linearly. Maybe they'll make a 3% or a 4% or a 5% raise every year. Their value to the marketplace grows linearly. But someone who focuses on consistent strategic growth and develops their soft skills as well as other technical skills so that they can cross-pollinate knowledge areas, they will grow geometrically. They will compound their value over time, over 5 years, over 10 years, over 20 years, over 30 years. And you can see the difference in the growth rates. So your personal economic value compounds geometrically as long as you are developing yourself. So what do these two guys have in common? Well, you have, most people know these two, and I would assume that you do as well, but you have Albert Einstein on the left and Warren Buffett on the right. Now, the reason I love putting these two next to each other is because a quote that many people attribute to Warren Buffett actually came from Albert Einstein. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. Warren Buffett learned compound interest that was the key to success. And so he started implementing that. And you can see that he started when he was really, really young. And it took a long time to get to the point where he was, now Warren Buffett. But this is now 8 years ago. So this is when he was 83, he's now 90. But you can look at the wealth And you can look at how that developed. And you can see that it was not linear. It did compound and it did take time. But it happened because he understood that compounding is the way to build wealth and really the way to build success in your career. So most people are familiar with compound interest because that's been beaten into us in college, and usually in K through 12 we're taught what compounding is. But how do we actually think about it in terms of personal economic value? And the reason this is important is not too many of us are starting off with a lot of money early in our career. And so a lot of people, when they don't have money, they think, well, I'm stuck. I'm forever stuck because I can't compound nothing. And the secret is you don't start compounding with money. You start compounding information, your mind, your ability to think creatively and solve problems and see solutions. So personal economic value is very different from monetary value. Monetary value is money. Personal economic value derives from your information and your time. And there's only three forms of value in the world: time, money, and information. Well, time is fixed, and you cannot compound your time because we're all given 24 hours in a day. And money is monetary, and most people know that money can be compounded through compound interest, but not very many people understand how information can be compounded and the value of compounding information and how much money you can make from it. So that is the key to your ability to make a lot of money in the marketplace, is you need to compound your information, your understanding of the world, your ability to think creatively. So we compound our personal economic value by developing our information value. And for us, our information value includes our skills, our knowledge, and our experience. So we need to strategically grow and focus on personal development in terms of developing our skills, our knowledge, and our experiences. Because as we do, we will compound our value, our personal value to the marketplace. So as an example, let's say you have your first knowledge area. And let's say that this is finance. And I'm just using that example because my background's finance. But so let's say that you have one knowledge area, and the first point within this knowledge area is you understand financial statements. So you can read them, understand them, etc. Then you have a second knowledge point, which is, let's say you understand Excel. And you know how to, because of this, you understand Excel and financial statements. You now have one line of creativity, which means that you can take financial statements and rebuild them in Excel and start to manipulate them, start to change them, start to use them as a tool and use them for forecasting. But then let's say that you get a third knowledge area, a third point within the knowledge area. And let's say that that's VBA. So you actually learn how to automate certain parts of your Excel. Well, now you have three different lines of creativity. So what if you add a fourth point? And let's say that that fourth point is you start to understand investing knowledge and how to make investment decisions. Well, you now have 6 lines of creativity, and you can make and think of a lot more ideas than someone who only has the ability to understand financial statements. So what happens when you bring in another knowledge area? So the second knowledge area could be computer science, could be programming. Well, historically, when this happened, is there were people who had deep financial experience and financial knowledge, but on top of that, they layered on computer science. And that's when the quantitative trading and quantitative finance was born, because people started writing computer algorithms and high-frequency trading algorithms that took both computer science and combined it with finance. And they coded algorithms that did trading. So as they continued to improve that second knowledge area, more and more opportunities were created. Now, someone who has this ability is going to be a lot more valuable to the marketplace than someone who only understands finance. And again, I'm only using computer science as an example. There's many other things that people have layered on top of finance or any other knowledge area. And then if you add a third knowledge area, it continues compounding. So going back, you can, if you watch the number of the creative lines, it's 1 to 3 to 6 to 10 to 15 to 21 to 28 to 36 to 45, and imagine if you were to keep going. How many lines of creativity would you have? How many associations between these different cross-pollinated knowledge areas would you have? So, by developing your skills, your knowledge, and experience, your network of associations will increase geometrically. It will compound geometrically. So, this compounding is how you actually become creative. A lot of people have the belief that creativity means standing in the shower and thinking so hard that your brain hurts, or being struck by lightning, figuratively, that you're walking down the street and all of a sudden, boom, you have an idea. That's creativity. Well, yes, it's somehow happens like that, but in order to have a creative idea, your mind needs to understand and have the ability to interpret and perceive things. And the only way that your mind can do that is through developing itself by cross-pollinating skills, knowledge, and experiences and compounding those associations. That is how you create creativity. So a lot of people think that, oh, well, I'm not creative because I don't know how to paint, or I'm not creative because I don't know how to play music. Creativity is not the arts. Now, yes, you need to have creativity in the arts, but many business people, many politicians, people in sports, everybody can be creative in their own way and apply creativity to whatever it is that they do. But in order to do that, they need to be able to compound their knowledge and understanding of very different areas or different technical skills. So, creativity is extremely valuable, and creativity is the most valuable thing you can bring to the marketplace, because you might have an idea that no one else in the world has, or no one else in your company has, or no one else on your team has. So, creativity leads to problem solving, resourcefulness, innovation, and improvement. And it's so important to be creative. Creativity is how you outcompete. If all you're doing is focusing on competition and competing with other people, you'll have marginal improvements, maybe a 5% better, a 10% marginal advancement over your competition. But if you're creative, you could have a 10 times better solution, or a 5 times better solution, or 100 times better solution than your competitor, because you entirely created a brand new solution. So, I love this quote by Steve Jobs. So this was during one of the commencement speeches that he was giving. I believe it was at Stanford. And Steve Jobs said, "Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new things. And the reason they were able to do that was that they've had more experiences, or they've thought more about their experiences than other people. Now, unfortunately, that's too rare a commodity. A lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences, so they don't have enough dots to connect. And they end up with very linear solutions without a broad perspective on the problem. The broader one's understanding of the human experience, the better design we will have." So, Steve Jobs, his background actually started in calligraphy and typography. He was very, very focused on design. But when he married his technical skill and his knowledge of design with that of technology and computers, he created solutions, beautiful technology that previously never existed. He created user interfaces and user experiences that were so simple that everybody could understand how to use it. And all of a sudden, many people started adopting technology that previously they viewed as intimidating. So that was a creative solution, and the only reason he was able to come up with that creative idea was because he understood and cross-pollinated two very different areas of knowledge. So Apple was the first publicly traded company in history to ever reach a $1 trillion market cap, and it was because of their creativity. So another quote that I absolutely love is from Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn focuses on and preaches, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And the reason he preached that was because he understood that in order to climb the economic value ladder, you need to improve your own value before you ever expect the marketplace to pay you more, to pay you a higher salary, to promote you, to give you a raise. You yourself need to get better first and add more value first before you'll ever be able to monetize that value in the marketplace. A lot of people expect raises, whether it's 10%, 20%, etc., or they're frustrated when they don't get promoted. But the thing is their value, their personal value, never changed. They didn't improve themselves and provide ideas that were more value to the team or to the company. And so the way that the company or the manager or whoever it is that is making those decisions, they think to themselves, well, you're doing the exact same thing as you did last year. Why would I pay you more? So Jim Rohn's quote, work harder on yourself than you do on your job, is going back to that root cause, which is saying you need to improve your own value first. And then once you've improved your value or increased your value, then you'll be paid more by the marketplace. So I love this article and I wanted to share this with you. So the 5-hour rule used by Bill Gates, Jack Ma, and Elon Musk. So Bill Gates, a billionaire, Microsoft in the United States. Elon Musk is Tesla, as well as several other companies that many other people know. But primarily most people know Elon Musk because of Tesla and really SpaceX. I would say both of them. And then Jack Ma, who's a billionaire and extremely successful in China. Now, when you look at this, so really quickly, it says there, devote an hour a day to reading and learning. All of them, I cannot imagine how busy these people are, but all of them devote an hour a day to reading and learning, no matter how busy they are. And that's how much they value personal development and growing their minds. So it's not exactly breaking news. During his 5-year study of more than 200 self-made millionaires, Thomas Corley found that they don't watch TV. Instead, an impressive 86% claim that they read, but not just for fun. And that's the important part. They're not reading for fun, for entertainment. What's more, 63% indicated they listen to audiobooks during their morning commute. Productivity expert Chauncey Mado writes, it's no secret that successful people read. The average millionaire is said to read 2 or more books per month. As such, she suggests everyone read blogs, news sites, fiction, and nonfiction during downtime so you can soak in more knowledge. If you're frequently on the go, listen to audiobooks or podcasts. President Obama is far from the only leader to credit his success to reading. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, Mark Cuban, and Jack Ma are all voracious readers. As Gates told the New York Times, reading is one of the chief ways that I learn and has been since I was a kid. So, read. Self-made millionaires, including Mark Cuban and Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, read between 1 and 3 hours daily. Elon Musk learned how to build rockets, which led to SpaceX, by reading. And that fact, a lot of people don't know. Elon Musk literally just took books and taught himself how to build rockets solely through reading. Unreal. Incredible. So besides expanding your knowledge, Jack Ma, co-founder of Alibaba, says reading can give you a good head start. This is often what your peers cannot obtain. Compared to others, readers are more likely to know other industry strategies and tactics. So what Jack Ma is saying there is by understanding and knowing other industry strategies and tactics, you're going to be able to cross-pollinate your understanding across industries that leaders within your individual industry don't understand. Cross-pollination of knowledge. So, climbing the economic value ladder is again strategic, focused, and disciplined personal development and compounding your knowledge associations. And by doing so, you're going to be able to come up with ideas and then monetize those ideas and continuously climb this economic value ladder. Now, someone who doesn't focus on personal development is going to get stuck at the bottom of the totem pole, at the bottom of the economic value ladder, because they're stuck at the technical skills ceiling, because they're not cross-pollinating ideas or cross-pollinating knowledge areas, which leads to creativity, and they're also not improving their soft skills, their ability to sell, to influence, to negotiate, to lead people. So the world's most successful people become successful through cross-pollinating knowledge areas and developing themselves personally. But then the big question that all of us have is, all right, well, how long is it going to take to do that? Is that going to take 30 years? Because a lot of people then kind of throw in the towel. They're like, it's not worth it. But it doesn't, there's no set defined period of time because it really depends on what your dreams are, what your goals are for your life. So the way that you can think about it is knowing that your skills and your knowledge, your information value will compound. It means that you're going to have a long tail. The beginning is going to be frustrating. The beginning will take time. And that's the most frustrating part for everybody. It's a lot of learning and growing and struggling and failing and building experiences. But through that entire time period of learning, growing, failing, struggling, and building, that's when your mind is compounding. That's when you're coming up with your understanding, the way to see the world differently, coming up with ideas that other people don't have. But the biggest problem is that most people quit here. They quit in the very beginning of the tail, and they can't see ahead of them. They can't see 12 months or 24 months or 36 months ahead of them and say, if I keep going, where will I be? How valuable will my mind be? What will I be able to know and understand and come up with that other people can't come up with? And you're not going to actually start seeing results or being able to monetize this compounded value in your mind until the later point. And how long that might be, it might be 12 months, it might be 24 months, it might be 5 years. It could be 3 months, who knows, depending on what it is that you're focusing on. But it takes time, and you have to devote a period of time and understand that it's not going to be value add immediately. You're going to be stuck in the tail for a while. But once that happens, once you hit that point where you start seeing results, that's where everything starts connecting. That's where, as Steve Jobs said in that quote, you start to see things that other people don't see, that other people don't understand. Everything starts connecting, and that's where explosive growth in your life, in your career, and everything starts happening. That's when you start compounding your wealth, your money. So I like to think of it as a volcano. So in the bottom, it's kind of like you're filling up this underground chamber that is your mind through constantly developing yourself, reading books, taking online courses, working with coaches, going back and getting another degree, doing something to improve your skills and knowledge and your understanding of the world, your experiences. As you continuously fill this chamber, that's where everything is compounding. Now, eventually, it's going to compound and compound and compound until eventually you're going to come into contact with something where, boom, it's going to erupt. And that's where you have an idea that's creative, that is valuable, where you see something that other people don't see, that you are able to do something or solve a problem that other people can't solve. And it took time to get there, but it's worth it because who knows what that valuable idea is worth. So, as a service provider, because that's what you are, and never forget it, you are a business on your own, you are a service provider to the marketplace. This is how you can bring tremendous value. And this is how you can make a lot of money. By developing your mind, becoming extremely valuable mentally by cross-pollinating knowledge areas, becoming creative, and then being able to actually bring those creative ideas to life through your leadership skills. Again, those are your soft skills. So sales, influence, negotiation, leading teams, etc. And by doing so, you're going to climb this economic value ladder. And you're not going to get stuck at the technical skill ceiling, and you're going to compound, climb the ladder, and eventually you're going to have ideas that erupt. Now, when you become someone with that sort of mind, when you're able to bring that creative energy and that mindset to the marketplace, there are very few other people globally in the marketplace that have developed themselves to this level. And because of that, you're going to be the one earning the top part of the salary curve, earning the top part of the compensation curve. So when there's very few people in the marketplace that have the skills and abilities and creative mindset that you do, or the leadership skills that you do, what that means is, again, if you're the service provider, you're the sell side and the buy side's the company, and you're confident that you're one of these people, and you know that you're one of these people, and you have a track record to be able to prove it, companies will come to you and say, hey, please come work with us. We believe you can add massive value to our team, to our company, or to a specific product line or something. And you'll be able to respond with, well, what's in it for me? And the reason you can say that is you know the value you can provide. You're confident in the value you can provide. And you have the negotiation leverage because you know that there are very few other people like you. And then let's say you're currently working for a company and you know that you are one of the most thoughtful and creative, and you are a key person within the company. Well, the company will say, hey, please don't leave us. And you'll say, well, how will you make me stay? And again, it's because you've become the key person with negotiation leverage. You're expensive to replace. You're hard to find. And when you become that person, you become irreplaceable. You're unique in the marketplace. You have differentiated insights, ideas, creativity, a different perspective. You solve problems that other people can't solve, and you have a leadership ability that other people don't have. So your replacements, if you were to leave, replacements are extremely hard to find and evaluate, and they're extremely expensive. To lose someone with that ability is very expensive to a company, not just in terms of direct expense, but also in terms of opportunity cost, because it might take them a year or 6 months to find someone else capable of what you're doing. And so not only are they terrified of losing you, but they're terrified of, oh my gosh, if we lose this person, it's going to take us that much longer to find someone. And what are going to be the negative consequences to the business if we don't have someone like you for 6 months or for 12 months? So in terms of having negotiation leverage, you can ask for and continuously negotiate better compensation throughout your career because you know your value. So when you become irreplaceable, you control your career because you have the negotiation leverage. So as a very quick summary for you, you live in a global marketplace that's driven by both a buy side and a sell side. The buy side has problems, they pursue opportunities, and they desire things. The sell side provides solutions to those problems, helps advance those opportunities, and fulfills those desires. The value being exchanged between the sides are products, services, and financial assets. These transactions between the buy side and sell side are valued subjectively and subjectively. You are a service provider in the marketplace, providing labor, thought, and leadership. And I want to take a second to expand on that too. If you were not working for a company, if you could not find a company to hire you, you could become a freelancer. You could sell your services or work for someone and find clients. That alone should prove to you that you are a service provider. Think of yourself as a business and never forget that. You are not an employee. You are a business and you need to treat yourself as such. And when you make decisions in your career, you need to think about yourself as a business. What would a business do? Would a business purposely accept a lower return or a lower compensation because they feel loyal to someone? Perhaps, but would they do that indefinitely? No. So you need to stand up for yourself, and you need to consider yourself seriously. I am a business, and I will do what's best for my business. Just like businesses lay people off, you need to view yourself as, well, if a business is willing to lay me off, why should I devote my loyalty to a business if they view me as someone that could be laid off, as just another worker in the workforce? Well, they're making a business decision. Similarly, you need to make business decisions in your career. View yourself as a service provider in the marketplace. You are a business. All right, enough of that. So your personal economic value can be compounded geometrically through strategic growth, which generates creativity. You become irreplaceable by compounding the associations between cross-pollinated skills, knowledge, and experiences, which generates creative ideas. And you then communicate these ideas through your soft skills. This differentiates you, it creates negotiation leverage, and it gives you control over your career. Career advancement, career freedom, and compounding wealth are the result of becoming irreplaceable. So that's it for part 3 of module 1. In module 2, we're going to dive into mindset transformation and how to become the person who will achieve all the dreams, all the desires that you have in your life, because the single biggest block that people have in their careers, as well as their personal lives, it always comes down to mindset and personal performance. So module 2, we'll dive into mindset. So thank you, and I'll see you in module 2.